or welcome to episode 2 of the Ethan Bird Show here on the Capital Review YouTube channel. Remember to check out our website at thecapitalreview369429705.wordpress.com. Of course, we're looking to upgrade that domain name in the future. Check us out on Twitter at The Capital Review. In Twitter, it was weird, so it's THE, capital spelled CAPTL review at the CAPTL review. And then Instagram just at the Capital Review. Check us out on those forums as well. We have Facebook, just the Capital Review. And we're going to dive right into this. I know last show, was our first one. So the first one's always the worst one. That's my opinion, at least. And so I was rambling on it, but we're trying to get through things quicker today. We're going to talk about a little bit of the West Virginia stuff, and then we're just going to move right on. So we're going to have a few topics. I'm just going to break them down quick, give my opinion. If you want to look in deeper, in depth, this is not going to be a completely in-depth show. So you can look at this on your own time. There's plenty of information. I can't give all the stats. Stuff would be boring. So this is breaking news as of today. West Virginia Governor Jim Justice signs a bill Tuesday that gives a 5% pay raise to all state employees, including striking teachers and school staff. And then the teachers' unions said back that this is going to have school back in session on Wednesday. It was a strike for 9 days. School was closed. I said it yesterday or Sunday. Sorry, we didn't have one yesterday. Couldn't do it. But I said on Sunday that this might actually be welcome for some kids, but I completely forgot something that might have been a little bit insensitive. Is that there's a lot of kids who probably rely on school for their meals, and that's unfortunate. But I read somewhere on social media that actually some teachers banded together and rounded up food for these kids that rely on school lunches for these 9 days they weren't at school. And that's a great story, but it's unfortunate that kids that rely on school for lunch. And then Justice told cheering crowds of cheering educators, we're doing a lot of polling. This is a big victory lap for him because I guess he's a Democrat turned Republican, and their legislator is very Republican, so it's very, they're all pressured to the right instead of to the center where most of the state, well, not most of the state in West Virginia, but usually when it's a mostly right-wing body, then they're pressured to go towards the right. So he comes out looking like a reasonable figure of compromise, Governor Jim Justice, and he definitely benefits from the fact that Justice is his last name. That's a fortunate coincidence for him. I think he's just a calculating, conniving politician. You can see that by the fact that he switched parties in West Virginia right after Trump won big there. I mean, Obama lost big too, but you see Joe Manchin trying to shift to the right and stuff, and he just became a Republican and kind of just switched sides, So I don't see him as much of a great dude, but I will give him credit on this. He does look like the winner from this, if there is a winner. He got the pay raise. The thing. The teachers' unions were saying about how great this is. And this kind of is suspicious because you think the unions are just working something into their own contracts. This might not help the teachers long term, but at least the teachers will feel like it's better. Now, but here's something. It's the task force. So the teachers that the New York Times interviewed, etc. They talked about how the task force was not enough. They wanted them to actually fix it right there. Not been fixed. That's something I took away from this article as well. And so they talked about Oklahoma as well might be involved. Legislative standoff. They were fighting over 1%, and then the funding would come out of Medicare, Medicaid, someone said, and then Justice said it will not come out of that. So again, Justice is trying to cover himself, cover his own hide, and you think, at the end of the day, I think we'll write one out. Not that the unions won, the legislator won, or I won. It's the idea, the premise that we ought to invest in education, let education be an economic driver for us. West Virginia ranks in terms of test scores one of the worst in the country. If it took a teacher strike for you to think education was important, that's just ridiculous. This quote at the end is just typical politician speak. It's frankly just gross. When you look at the face value, it's like, oh, yeah, this is a cliche. Yeah, this is inspiring. But no, it's not. It's inspiring. It's just he's just trying out cliches. He just hasn't actually done anything. It's really just like a lie, and it's sickening. But we'll move on to the next article, which is very interesting news. You think about just a couple months ago, we were thinking we're on the verge of World War III. We still may be there because the world has so many problems. You don't even want to get into all that. As soon as this loads, the New York Times. I've really been disappointed in the New York Times recently. They have such a storied history. And they were for a long time have been considered the best paper in the world and such. And I just think that they're really not living up to the hype. And this whole monetization of the articles, they have millions of dollars. And it's you only have 9 videos a month. I only have 2 left after this one. But this is of course a very important article. And you all heard about this, the North Korean and South Koreans meeting in Pyongyang, and I think they're going to meet in North Korean border town. They're meeting in late April on the country's border right here with Moon Jae-in. Moon Jae-in's a guy I really like. A friend who's Korean. His dad was involved in the campaign, I think. So, Korean's definitely a good leader for the Koreans after the whole corrupt president was just ousted. And North Korea actually says they're ready to denuclearize, which is huge because they said for a while they weren't going to. And it was we were thinking that we were going to have to live with a nuclear North Korea. We still might have to. And, I'm not going to say for once because there actually have been some good things Trump's done. As I generally think he's just another disgusting politician and he hasn't really done much to benefit working people as much as he claims he has. And he's definitely been horrible in the environment, just probably the worst environmental president we've ever had. As far as healthcare, a lot of that stuff is overblown, but he still has not been very good in healthcare or poverty. But in some things, I think his moderate approach to gun control, but then he's kind of leaning towards the left and then also towards the right. He's trying to play both sides. It's so weird with the NRA thing. He's praises the NRA and then criticizes them. It's pick a side or pick a middle, but don't try to play both extremes. But anyway, so Trump actually was completely correct in his tweet. But sorry there. It's confusing. Possible progress being made, talks with North Korea. For the first time in many years, a serious effort is being made by all parties concerned. The world is watching and waiting. Maybe false hope, but the U.S. is ready to go hard in either direction. The last part, go hard in either direction, I get what he's trying to signal, that we are not afraid to use military force, but it's still not really necessarily tied like this because North Korea knows that, of course. And so whoever translator is trying to translate this is Kim Jong-un. Kim Jong-un knows that we're ready to use force if they were to mess around with us, so don't think that's necessary. But yeah, first time in many years, a serious effort is being made by all parties concerned. That's true. It's been a long time. I think since 2007, the article said that we haven't had these negotiations between North and South Korea. And the world's, and maybe false hope. He's right. It may be false hope. This may just be a false hope, but let's at least put some hope into it. And the fact that Kim Jong-un met personally is very important because he's pretty much the autocrat there. And the fact that he and Moon Jae-in are going to go face to face and talk about some things. And the Olympics, I think, really helped with this. Everyone said the Olympics is just a symbolic thing, but without the Olympics, I don't think this is happening. It's really interesting. The Olympics were a complete dud. The ratings were down. The hockey really tanked it because the NHL didn't let the players go. Pretty much the biggest attraction, other than maybe like the figure skating and skiing, is the hockey. And it was just an abysmal failure. Russia won, the OAR or whatever, because the doping scandal won. None of the good players got to go, really. So, but Germany, that was a cool story, but overall the Olympic ratings were just dreadful. I didn't really watch much of it at all. But it was important to bring North and South Korea together. So if it saves the world but doesn't give us sports, hey, who cares? This was just breaking news within a couple hours, or like an hour ago. Trump economic advisor. I'm sorry, this computer's really been slow today. It's been bugging the crap out of me. Trump economic advisor Gary Cohen. Load. Can you load? So now we finally got this up. Trump economic advisor Gary Cohen to resign. I think they spelled his name wrong in the headline. That's really embarrassing. Roll call is usually a pretty good website. Get out of here. Okay. That's Gary Cohen, typical schmoozer in Washington. Swamp. When is the swamp going to drain? Because I haven't seen any progress being made on that at all. But the lobbying ban that he was talking so much during the campaign was just a dud, and no one even talked about that. It was like, what? Hold him accountable. The media is so stupid because they're so hard on him on everything. Or not on everything, I should say. But like on the things they really want to harp on about, like the Russia thing, the way he uses bad words, the way he's rude and crass and mean. And they don't even hold him accountable for the things that he actually does that are actually hurting people, like letting this corruption continue, which isn't his fault completely because it was there before he got in there, but he campaigned a ton on losing this or draining the swamp, and he's just not been very good on that. So he is moving forward with the import tariffs, and Cohen objected to that. Now on the tariffs, I don't think it's going to really do a whole lot because it's like the system where it was 0.15% of the entire U.S. GDP is based on the steel and aluminum industry, so it's not really going to affect the economy that much. But everyone on the right has been, crapping their pants over Trump's like a liberal on trade or whatever. Whatever, who cares? But and free trade, I think free trade in general is a good thing, but you need to make sure in the agreements that workers are protected and that other countries aren't taking advantage of us. But it's idiotic just to make us pay higher prices for cars just because China is producing a lot of steel. And we're still one of the top steel manufacturers. Our steel industry is doing fine. It's just really technology. It's really more than outsourcing that's been killing a lot of these jobs. Because, remember there was a steel mill over in Youngstown, which is near me, and they employ something like 500 people. I'm probably getting the numbers wrong, but the general idea is the case. And the same size steel mill would employ 20,000 people back in 1980 or something like that. And Tim Ryan, our local representative, was talking about this. And so it's just like the technology is making so you need less people to do it. That's a lot of the reason. But so, Gary's been a chief economic advisor. Now, Gary Cohen, where does it say up here? Yep. Yeah, he resigned. And he was a former Wall Street investor. There it is, right there. Trump the whole time, Cruz and Hillary were just Wall Street, hammering them on Wall Street. And this guy is from Wall Street, and he's an investment banker, so he cares about the big banks. He cares about these banks that actually are harming our freedom. You also have the government harming our freedom to stay out of the economy or whatever. But these banks, they really took advantage of people. They use illegal practices. They money launder. They do risky projects that crash the economy. And it's one thing to crash the economy because, in a free society, economic crisis will happen. And it's better because we all have the ability to control our own choices, etc. But they got bailed out after that, which is really disgusting that they were bailed out after they crashed their own companies. If a regular business does it, they don't get bailed out. If the guy down the street running a hardware store crashes his company and then somehow that crashes this economy of your small town, he doesn't get a bailout from the city government. That would be ridiculous. It would be idiotic to bail out people who caused the problem. To fix the problem using new ideas. So Wall Street, I've never been a big fan of those guys. So yeah, of course, Cohen Trump claimed to have choice of anybody. Of course, it always has to be the most dramatic thing with him. But again, don't really care more the policy substance. Trump must now fill Cohen's position. Yes. So this is just a news story that people are talking about online because it's like a political thing. But do I think it's really going to change anything for everyday people? No, because whoever Trump appoints as Gary Cohen with this exact same kind of guy as Gary Cohen. Gary Cohen wasn't one of those Trump whisperer people like John Kelly or General Mattis who try to keep him on topic. So Gary Cohen, just another economic advisor, just another Wall Street banker. You pretty much forget his name now. All right. This next story is actually very interesting. This was from yesterday. But of course, the Texas primary election was today. And of course, because it's a great state of Texas, as I'm sure they would want me to say, they are an hour behind the Eastern Standard Time, so it's 6:30, 1 p.m. right there, right now. As of this video, the polls are not closed yet, but I would say that it's pretty much a formality that the primary at this point, that Ted Cruz will win the Republican primary, Beto O'Rourke will win the Democratic primary for Senate, and then as far as all the governor races, I haven't really paid attention because governor races in other states don't usually affect your state, but we'll see. But the Senate affects everyone, so I haven't paid attention to that one. The numbers are just shocking. And I read. Start with that video there. I'm not sure if you guys could hear that or not. The video that was playing. I read somewhere that Texas had like 50% of their eligible voters don't vote. So there's a huge demographic. Everyone thinks that Texas is a big red state, but it's really not. Texas went for Trump by the same margin Ohio went for Trump, and Ohio is considered a swing state. It just happened that Hillary's such an unlikable candidate, and that Trump managed to do a lot of things people didn't think he could do. That he won, somewhat big in Ohio, but then like really close compared to Texas. Usually, like Republican mops the floor of the Democrat in Texas. But with the Democratic changes, more Latinos, more young people coming on in Texas, and all those people who don't vote, and the Democrats could really make a play for them. I always said Texas could be a swing state. The problem is, when is it? I think it's more 2024-ish, but 2020 certainly. I'm not sure. I think 2020 is too soon. I don't think O'Rourke will win, but I think if he gives Cruz a run for his money and the Democrats have a wave, that really will send a message in Texas. So look at this. Look at these numbers. These are shocking. 205,583 people voted early in the 2014 Democratic primary. This year, 406,308 Democrats voted early. That's a huge increase. That's a 98% increase. It's almost doubled. On the GOP side, 350,000, 2,000 people voted early in the Republican primary. In 2014, the number was 303,858, so a 16% increase there. So, of course, more people are voting because the population of Texas is growing rapidly, just like all the other Sun Belt states. Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California. I'm not sure about New Mexico as much, but Texas, Arizona, California definitely growing. Colorado's another state that I know has been growing. Ohio's been growing at a very slow rate. I think states like West Virginia usually are the ones that lose population. So Texas, of course, both style an increase. But if you notice, in terms of early votes in 2014, Republicans 303,000 about, Democrats 205,000 about. So the Republicans had about 100,000 more voters, which makes sense because that's like more Republican state. But now this year, the Democrats are outnumbering the Republicans by about 50,000. So that's a complete flip, and both sides have agreed, which is good because more people participate in the political process. Now, I don't think as many of them are active as we would want them to, and more engaged and really questioning their own beliefs. But at least they're voting. That's the first step, and it's just shocking that so many Democrats would vote. Now, because it's the beginning of a blue wave, I think this is the beginning of a blue wave in the Lone Star State. But this is a very slow wave. Maybe like a ripple effect, or like when you throw a rock in the water and it comes back at you, like a slow thing. It's not going to be like, okay, all of a sudden Texas is a blue state. No. But it definitely is switching to more of a swing state, more of a competitive state. It used to be if you were a Democrat, you thought you could win Texas, you're out of your mind. Now there's a chance. So I think that's a very interesting story about how the turnout in Texas. Now, of course, it's still half the people don't even vote there. So they have one of the lowest turnout rates in the country, which is ironic considering they seem to be so patriotic. But I think that if those people are turned out and the Democrats continue, this could definitely be. You think about it. This is a swing state. If it becomes a swing state, right now I think it's more in the lean Republican column. This is a swing state with 38 electoral votes. This will be a huge player in national elections. If Texas becomes not blue, I don't think it will become blue. Maybe I'm hesitant to say it in my lifetime, but definitely not for a while. But if it becomes purple, this is where presidential elections will be decided because it's a huge state. There's a lot of places you can campaign: Dallas, San Antonio, Houston, Austin, El Paso, Waco, Galveston. I'm missing a lot of places. Corpus Christi. There's tons of places you campaign. There's tons of different voter demographics: African Americans, Latinos, whites, urban, suburban, rural. You got it all in Texas. That could be basically where the future of the country is decided if it turns purple. Because right now they just ignore it because it was a red state. Well, very interesting coming out of Texas here. Then we'll close this show with a discussion about the environment when this decides to load. This is someone else's commentary, so this is not exactly a factual article, but it's from truthout.com, and it's written by political science professor Mel Gertov, who I think is a pretty good professor. I haven't seen anything sketchy in this record when I looked him up, so we'll see. This definitely is a biased source. I just want to tell you guys this right now. But I wanted to discuss the environment because it's very I care a lot about, but there wasn't any major news in terms of the Trump administration, because I think there's a ton of news about Cape Town and stuff that we could definitely cover. But I wanted to talk about how our government is dealing with it. So you can read the article if you want over at truthout.org. The rollback thing basically just talk about how Trump is anti-science. He doesn't have a science advisor. Scott Pruitt, one of the worst people in this administration, Scott Pruitt, who basically doesn't let the EPA do its job. Now, if you want to have an actual honest debate about the role of the EPA, that's perfectly acceptable. You should have that in the halls of Congress. You should have that in the public forum. But you should not be just using the executive branch to tamp down the EPA because you want to let the oil and gas companies off the hook, which is what the Trump administration is doing because they're deeply in debt with oil and gas companies and coal companies, And I read somewhere that Trump has been really good for the coal companies, but not good for the coal miners. He promised all those benefits to them, hasn't delivered. So the latest Dems report about the volume of the oceans is expanding, and there's huge consequences of ocean dead zone with zero oxygen. Now, even if you don't, I honestly at this point, I don't know how you cannot believe in climate change, but that's kind of a weird term because the climate's always been changing. But I think at this point, the greenhouse gas effect is proven science. People will never say they don't believe in the greenhouse gas effect, but they will say, oh, I don't know if humans are causing climate change. If you believe in the greenhouse gas effect, that's pretty much how we are causing climate change. These gases that are released in the air, they're molecules blocking the ozone layer, trapping more heat in the planet. Now, global warming is different because that's when the average global temperature goes up, which is an obvious effect of the greenhouse effect. But it's not just global warming because the greenhouse effect doesn't make everything just hot all of a sudden. It's magical. It just makes things, climate change more extremes. Like in Ohio, we used to always have like completely cold winter, really, well, not like a completely cold winter, but like, the winter usually would be snowy. Here we'd have a snow day because there was so much freaking snow. And the temperatures were so cold, they're like in the -10. And then like 2 days later, it would be like 65 and you go play outside basketball with your friends. And it's like the extremes of the atmosphere and the environment just went up and down, up and down. And that's definitely a product of human activity. And there's so much science on this, I can get into that later, but you want to keep this shorter because last episode was kind of a disaster in terms of how long it went. So there's so much about this offshore drilling, etc. And this is the whole point. This last section is how we're going to close tonight. And this is basically the core idea of Trump's ideology, which is let companies make their own rules. So they don't face the consequences from regulators. They say, oh, let's give the companies flexibility. Let's let them decide because they have the best interest at heart, right? Wrong. They don't. This is something that sounds good in theory, but it's not good in practice because the idea of, I think, like social or like environmental libertarianism is that the market will protect the environment. It only works if the market incentivizes green policies. These companies have no financial incentive to care for public health because the costs of public health are being passed on to the taxpayer and they're being passed on to future generations. So it's not seeing it right now. It's not like if the company, like let's say we had, because the only way to do this really is like, that's the whole idea of government regulation because the market won't do it. If there's a magical market, if our economy worked like, so let's say you pollute a river, then automatically you lose money because people stop shopping at your place because they don't like you polluting the river. That's not how it works because a lot of times people aren't informed. A lot of times the effects of the industry is places they don't know about. A lot of times it's not reported because now Trump's EPA, they're shutting down scientists. So the market doesn't self-regulate these people. And the government needs to regulate it, not because this is some giant authoritarian, liberal, Marxist conspiracy, but because it's the government's job to protect the rights of the individual. It's the government's job to protect the rights of the society as a whole as well. And the government derives its power from the consent of the governed. It's right there in the Declaration of Independence, John Locke, etc. The government just derives its power from the consent of the governed. I wouldn't say the government should have a lot of power in the environment, the economy, education, health, all these kinds of things if we were an autocracy, because that's not fair because the government doesn't have the consent of the majority. Now here, at least in theory, we have the consent of the governed. That's what voting is. That's why you need to get involved in politics. If you don't like the environmental regulations, you should vote for them. And I guess you could say people did vote for Trump. That's a fair claim. But actually, more people voted for Hillary, but they're both awful in my opinion, so whatever. But by saying that these manufacturers will just do it, it's in the Constitution the government can protect the general welfare of the citizens. If you don't have clean water, if you don't have clean air, if your land is filled with chemicals, you are not going to have a productive society. The whole idea of society is that we all pay a price to live in a civilized society. And when these oil companies and other companies, coal companies, gas companies, etc., well, these companies just want to make their own rules and not play by the other rules, but they still want to get the benefits of society. They still want to get the corporate welfare checks. They still want to get the public infrastructure they get to use. They still want to get regulation on solar industries and other industries so that they can make more money. They want to use the system without having to pay any of the costs. It's like you can't get things for free. It's just like that. They want to have free use of the good parts of the system without having to pay the cost. It's like if you want to have a business, then you can't make your business pollute other people's air. You can't make your business make it so kids can't breathe. But the Trump administration doesn't believe in this because the Trump administration is basically an administration run for the corporate interests. It was so funny because during the whole campaign, he's talking about how he's against special interests. And now, who's he running the whole country for? The special interests. Now, some of the time that overlaps with our interests. When you see on North Korea, etc., he's actually doing some of the right things. Now, some of the rhetoric, maybe not so much, but sometimes Trump's interest overlaps with our interests, but not always. And this is one of those things where you won't see it now, so conservatives will say, it doesn't matter. But in the future, you're going to see major ramifications of this. It's a disastrous policy, and I really think it's an unfortunate circumstance. That being said, that concludes the Ethan Bird Show, episode 2 for tonight. I hope you like the show. Of course, if you want to have a debate, comment, shoot us an email at thecapitalreviewmedia@gmail.com. If you want to write an opinion piece, go ahead. We're always looking for new content creators. We're always looking for new people to interact with our content. Of course, we're at a very low point right now, but we just started this channel. So back in November, and we haven't been doing much because we're students. We don't have time. I wish we could do this full time. But of course, smash that subscribe button, smash the like button, go on Instagram, go on Facebook, go on Twitter, see what we have to offer. And that's it. Thanks. Have a good day.